I talked about this not that long ago, but like every presidential election year, I said before, like there are surveys about electability. And the question that Gallup has asked for decades now amounts to, would you vote for a well qualified person from your political party if that person happened to be blank? And I just want to show you, I know I did this like a week or two ago, but let me show you this from Gallup this year. Okay. And again, this particular poll was taken when Joe Biden was in the race. But you could see, would you vote for a woman? And almost, 93% of Americans say, yeah, I have no problem voting for a woman from my political party if I thought that person was qualified for president. Like Democrats and Republicans, fine. Would you vote for a Hispanic person? Most people say yes. Catholic, sure. Black person, sure. Jewish person, yeah, 88%. And as you go down the list, this is not surprising. Gay and lesbian, you see Muslim, you see, would you vote for someone over the age of 70? And it gets low, and you can see even lower. Would you vote for someone over the age of 80, Joe Biden? And the answer is like really not good if you're Joe Biden. But you also see atheist on this list. It's at 60%. That's the point I want to make right now. 60% is so much higher than it used to be decades ago, and that's a good thing. But also, you could see it's very low on the list. I mean, we're still beating Bernie Sanders technically because socialist is under us, but atheists are at 60%, and that's not great. If you're an atheist, open about it, who is hoping to run for public office, maybe not president, but something close to that. But you get the idea. Being an atheist tends to be a political liability, right? Um, and so the reason I bring all this up is I've always seen that poll at the national level. Would you vote for a president if that person happened to be an atheist? I don't recall ever seeing a state level version of that kind of question. And last month, I finally got to see one of those. Last month, a group called DHM Research surveyed 500 people in the state of Washington. And they asked them questions like the one I just showed you. They asked them, how do you feel about various political groups? How do you feel about gun owners, immigrants, trans people, etc.? And they asked them to rank how they felt about those groups on a scale of 0, which means you hate them, to 100, which means you love them, right? So, like, just what do you think about them? Not would you vote for them, just what do you think about them? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Love them? Whatever. And look, Washington State is a relatively blue state. Maybe not the eastern side of it, but like a good chunk of Washington State is very blue. So it won't surprise you to learn they felt pretty warm towards Democrats more so than Republicans. They were not necessarily fond of gun owners. They really love, however, rural Washingtonians. So, okay, all that's not surprising. But I wanted to show you this one part of the survey, okay? And I'm going to blow this up. I tried to highlight these things. Look at what they said about Republicans. And they're at the top of the list first here. How do you feel toward the following groups? Republicans, the average right over here is 44.6. Remember, it's a scale from 0 to 100. 100 means you love them, 0 means you hate them. And look at the way it's broken up there. 0 to 20, 34% of Washingtonians said Republicans, yeah, they're from 0 to a 20. I really hate them. 34% of people put them in that category. And I have to imagine if you're going from 0 to 20, we're probably giving zeros. We're probably giving single digits there. So a third of Washington said, yeah, I really hate Republicans. How many people really loved Republicans? Because, like, who's lukewarm? You know what I mean? 17%, right above my head here, top row, 17% said, yeah, I pretty much love Republicans. That's not surprising, even though most people hate them in Washington. Look at the 40 to 60 section in the middle there. 15% are like, meh, which is kind of funny because, like, who the hell are these 15% who are like Republicans? I don't have much of an opinion on them. They're fine sometimes. Like, I don't know. I don't know anyone in my life who doesn't have strong opinions about that party in particular. So that's kind of interesting to me. But like people love or hate Republicans, but by and large, their average is 44.6. Okay, now I'm going to remove myself here so you can see the atheist column. Atheists are at 50.1. So average isn't great. It's still low on the list. But look, how many people hate us? Only 21%. How many people love us? 15%. A lot of people in Washington, however, a lot of people in Washington, however, put atheists in the 34% box right over here. We're from 40 to 60 degrees. A third of people in Washington say, on atheists, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I like some, I hate some, whatever. I'm in the middle. So it's a very interesting distribution there. A lot of people have, mediocre feelings about atheists. When it comes to Republicans, they either hate them or love them, and they mostly hate them. But I found it really fascinating that in the state of Washington, people dislike Republicans a lot more than they dislike atheists. That part right there is fascinating and new. And it led to this headline. This is in the Seattle Times right here. Never thought I'd see it. There's now a group less popular than atheists. And this is such a fun article to read here. This is from Danny Westneat, who is a Seattle Times columnist. But check this out. Republicans, take it from me. If you're below the atheists, you are having a major brand perception crisis. Republicans were perceived relatively poorly across the board by women and men, rich and poor, young and old, the poll found. Republicans did best in eastern Washington, no surprise there, it touches Idaho, and worst in King County, where 37% gave them the iciest ranking. Like, yep, they're not doing so hot across the state. That's interesting. He went on to say in his article that several Republicans on the ballot in Washington this November, they might actually be electable. They're not MAGA cultists. They are the sort of people who could presumably earn votes across the political spectrum, win a lot of independent voters, maybe some Democrats. They're the sort of people who could win those races. But the stench of being a Republican could doom their chances of winning. Like at the very least, the R next to their names on the ballot, it hurts them more than it helps them. And Westneat basically wrote, it suggests the party is again staggering toward a shutout in all 9 statewide campaigns. He also wrote this. He's trying to explain why is this happening, and this is what he wrote. The reasons for this, the reasons for why they hate Republicans more than atheists, were not explored. My sense, which I've stated repeatedly in the space, is that the complete takeover of the party by Donald Trump and his MAGA movement has made it toxic to the lion's share of voters here. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, he's totally ruined the Republican brand. Yeah, there's a very large group of Republicans who love Donald Trump, but for normal people and the rest of us, no, I'm never going to vote for a Republican as far as I can in the foreseeable future. I can say that for myself because I know what that party stands for, which is nothing, never anything good. You know what I mean? This guy goes on to also write in the same piece. This is interesting. He mentioned there is a Senate candidate in Washington who could actually win a race. But check this out. There it is. Consider how this suffocates someone like Garcia, the promising GOP Senate candidate. He is refusing to endorse Trump, which he deserves some credit for because somebody had to start the separation, but it's also too little too late. Due to his own party's cult-like fealty, he's got Trump wrapped around his neck anyway, and it's sinking him along with all the others. That local Republicans have been so willing to destroy themselves and their up-and-coming candidates in the service of this one man is one of the most baffling, imponderable things I've ever witnessed. It's so inexplicable, it almost feels religious. And you know what? He says it's inexplicable. I'll give it a shot. I'll give the explanation a shot. People used to fear atheists, I think, because they didn't know any. And they relied on negative stereotypes about them. Their fear was rooted in ignorance. If there was a great candidate, however, who happened to be an atheist, I think you would see those favorability numbers jump high pretty quickly. I think for a lot of people who might have been scared to support an openly gay candidate, Then Pete Buttigieg comes along and he's harmless and he's really smart. And it's like, you know what? The fact that he's gay doesn't bother me. I would vote for him. That's the sort of thing that can happen if you have an atheist candidate. Um, that stigma against being an atheist, like, it's not going to go away, but it could decrease, right? But when it comes to Republicans, there is no ignorance about who they are and what they represent. Like, people see exactly what Trump says. They see what the GOP platform says. They see what Project 2025 says. And they're largely rejecting it, at least so far as we've seen in midterm elections and whatnot, because it's not the future they want. Trump isn't a guy who just happens to be a Republican. He's a Republican who happens to be an awful human being. And all these other Republicans are like, yeah, I want in on that. And the party has elevated him to the top of their ticket for 3 straight presidential elections because he represents who they are and where they want to go. Like, you better believe that is off putting to voters, certainly in a blue state like Washington. I mean, like I said, the thing that stuck out to me in that survey is that only 15% of respondents in that survey had they were lukewarm on Republicans compared to the 34% who were lukewarm on atheists, because these people have very strong feelings about Republicans, even if they haven't always formed their opinions about atheists one way or the other. And about half of residents who have thought about Republicans dislike them in that survey, far more than the Washingtonians who like them. I liked a comment that was made under that Seattle Times column. Someone wrote, Republicans would still be the underdogs if Trump wasn't on the ballot, but his presence drags everybody down who is a Republican. Like, the atheists are probably not going to, those numbers are not going to change without a specific candidate to pull them up. But it is hard to imagine the Republican support increasing from where it's been stuck for several years without Trump loosening his grip on the party. And he's not going to do that because he needs the party to avoid jail and lawsuits and to keep the grift going. You know what I mean? So, as I shared in a video like last week, given the incredible number of openly non religious candidates at the state level, once some of them trickle up into national politics and people just get used to the idea of an atheist politician, I think it'll become even less of a concern. But it does strike me as really funny that atheism used to be one of the biggest taboos in politics, being openly non religious. And now I would much rather be an atheist than a Republican, depending on where I'm running, because there's a chance being a Republican just turns off so many more people. And as an atheist, I feel good about that. All right, I'm going to pause there for a bit. I got one more story for you after this. Nice to know my atheism is less of a problem than my socialism, I guess. Absolutely. And actually, if Bernie was the presidential candidate, I suspect a lot of people would turn out to, once they realize what socialism is, not what you hear about on Fox News, but the democratic socialism that like Bernie Sanders and AOC espouse, like they'd be thinking, oh, that actually sounds fine. One of these days we'll be in the majority. Sadly, I'll be dead by then. There is hope though. You know what? I disagree. We will be in the majority. Demographically speaking, the nuns are rising, and I think we will become the majority soon. I don't know when. Maybe it'll take a little while, but I don't think it's one of those like it'll take several decades before we're in the majority. I think organized religion is losing. And the fact that evangelical Christians, conservative Catholics have also latched on to Donald Trump just makes the exodus out of those denominations as well. That's going to happen even faster because, again, Trump is toxic and everything attached to Trump becomes toxic. You don't want to be a part of it. You're either in the cult or you want nothing to do with the cult. And so I don't know. I don't get why so many pastors are like, no, Trump is great. We're totally going to vote for him, because I think it's bad for them strategically. But that's what they're doing. I don't know. I'm glad they're not listening to my advice, I guess. Maybe soon Republicans will start hiding in the closet. Oh, you know what? That's not even a joke. I absolutely believe that. At some point, Trump will not be around anymore. And what you're going to find then is all these people who used to be Republicans who come out and say, well, I never really supported Donald Trump. And then we're all going to be like, but we have evidence. Here's the video of you saying Trump is the best. And they're going to be like, no, I just kind of had I didn't really believe any of that. All that gaslighting is going to happen the second Trump is away from them and cannot do them any more harm. But for the foreseeable future, like, even if something happens to Trump, guess what? His kids are around. And I've seen other people say this. Like, who do you think the presumptive Republican presidential candidate's going to be in 2028? If it's not Donald Trump, it's going to be one of his dumb sons, maybe Ivanka. Like, you know what I mean? The family has taken over the party, and elected Republicans have not shown any signs of moving past him or the name, the family name. So good, make them hide in the closet. They should be ashamed of themselves. It's not too late to do it now. I mean, my God, Dick Cheney is voting for Kamala Harris. Liz Cheney is voting for Kamala Harris and Colin Allred in Texas. If those people can do it, what is stopping all these other Republicans from doing it? They don't have to be this bad, even when they're awful. But I don't know. They're still jumping on board the sinking ship.